Day 24 of a long fast. I put on sandals I hadn't been able to wear comfortably for years. Then I walked 4 miles, and that was the moment I started taking my gut seriously. I'm Neil, 13 years of NHS blood tests, off all medication since February 2024. I used to think gut health was wellness content for people who didn't have real health problems. Then my calprotectin came back clean and 8 other blood markers improved at the same time. And I realised everything I'd been doing to fix my cholesterol, blood sugar and joints was working through the same mechanism. If something in your body has been quietly wrong for a while and nobody's connected the dots, the next 15 minutes might do that. First, what the gut actually does to your blood tests and why calprotectin is the one marker that almost nobody gets on the standard NHS panel. Then, the timeline of what I changed, what I ate and the specific moment 8 completely different markers moved in the same direction at the same time. And then the mechanism that connects all of it and why your joints, your inflammation score and your liver function may all have the same address. We start on day 24 of a 21-day fast, 3 days into the refeed, a pair of sandals and a 4-mile walk that I really wasn't expecting. Let's start with something that took me too long to understand. 70% of your immune system lives in the lining of your gut. Not in your blood, not in your lymph nodes, your gut. Will Bulsiewicz, gastroenterologist, wrote a book called Fibre Fueled. I couldn't put it down. Put it simply, if you were to ask the question, where does your immune system live? The answer is your gut. I had to sit with that for a minute when I first read it. I'd been treating gut health and immune health as two separate things. Turned out I'd missed the point entirely. So here's the mechanism. Your gut wall, the lining of your intestines, is supposed to be selective. It lets the right things through into your bloodstream and keeps everything else out. Nutrients in, bacteria, undigested food particles, toxins out. When that wall is healthy, your immune system stays calm. When it isn't, things start leaking through that shouldn't be there. And your immune system, finding foreign material in the bloodstream where it shouldn't be, does what immune systems do. It fires up. That firing up is inflammation. Now here's the analogy that made this click for me. Think about belly fat. Most people assume it's just stored energy, the body being lazy with leftovers. Turns out it's doing something much more deliberate. When bacteria leak out of a damaged gut wall into the surrounding tissue, the body panics. It sends fat cells rushing to the area to wall things off, like slapping a plaster over a wound. The visceral fat around your organs isn't passive. It's your immune system trying to contain a breach, which means the belly fat isn't the problem. It's the symptom of the problem. Fix what's causing the breach and the body often starts releasing the plaster. I'm going to come back to what that meant for me personally, but first the inflammation side. This is where Janet Lord comes in. She's a professor of biology of aging, 200 plus published papers, advises UK health policy. She's been studying what happens to inflammation as we get older. And what she found is that it doesn't sit still. It creeps. Whether you do the full fast or you do that 18-hour fasting, it stimulates anti-aging processes in the body, including dropping inflammation. But it also stimulates a process called autophagy. Autophagy, that's the cellular cleanup process, your body breaking down damaged proteins and clearing out the accumulated debris that keeps the immune system on alert. Janet Lord describes it as a little hoover going around the body, hoovering everything up. When the hoover runs, the alarm quietens down. Here's the other half of this. Bulsiewicz, and this is the line that properly stopped me, looked at the research and found over 130 health conditions linked to chronic inflammation. Then he looked at what else these 130 conditions had in common. Every single one was associated with a damaged gut microbiome. Not some of them, not most of them, every one. That's not a coincidence, that's a mechanism. Now, inflammation without an off switch, this is the part that rarely anyone explains clearly. Inflammation isn't the problem. Inflammation is supposed to happen. Your body fires it up, deals with whatever's wrong, then sends resolution signals to shut it back down. The problem is when the off switch stops working. It's like a runaway lorry on a motorway. The engine started fine, it was doing exactly what it was designed to do, but then the brakes failed. The damage isn't from starting, it's from not being able to stop. And what keeps the brakes failing? Ultra-processed food, chronic stress, poor sleep, a gut microbiome that's been depleted of the diversity. It needs to send the resolution signals in the first place. Tim Spector, epidemiologist, did the Zoe study, top 100 most cited scientists globally, put it this way: most of us are at a DEFCON level that's not quite right. We think there's some emergency going on in our bodies. Western diet and lifestyle keeps the immune system on permanent high alert. Chronic, low-grade inflammation becomes the default state. And here's where this matters beyond any single condition. The mechanism doesn't wait for a GP to notice. It's running in the background, quietly, often for years. Understanding how it works at 38 or 42 gives you more options than understanding it at 52. The third thing, and this is the practical part, how do you rebuild the microbiome that's supposed to send those resolution signals? You don't attack the bad bacteria, you crowd them out. Think of your gut like a garden. If you plant enough of the right things and tend to them properly, there's no room left for the weeds. They don't disappear because you've attacked them, they disappear because they've been crowded out. You don't need a chemical, you need ground cover. Feed the good stuff well enough and the bad stuff runs out of space. Stanford University ran a study, Spector references it often, 36 participants eating 5 daily portions of fermented foods versus a high fibre diet. The fermented food group showed a significant decrease in 19 inflammatory proteins in just a few weeks, not months, weeks. Spector described it as the first study to clearly show the immune effect of ferments in humans. It's worth noting that's the initial microbiome response. Full transformation for chronic conditions takes longer, weeks to months of consistent effort. The first change happens quickly. The deep healing takes time. I wanted to know if this was true in one specific 53-year-old from Yorkshire with 13 years of NHS blood tests. So I tested it. January 2025, blood test results came back. CRP, C-reactive protein, your inflammation marker, 6.2. That's technically within the normal range, which runs 0 to 10, but it's sitting in the middle of normal for me. Felt like a problem I hadn't properly named yet. I didn't think of myself as inflamed. I thought of myself as someone with gout, someone with slightly elevated cholesterol, someone who'd been on statins and alpurinol for years and had had mixed results from both. I didn't think of those as the same thing. I thought they were separate problems. 14 months of fasting, non-UPF eating, daily fermented foods, sleep discipline. In April 25, I went back for the bloods. CRP 1. That's a drop of 84% in 3 months. I sat in the car outside the surgery and read that number. I wasn't expecting it to be that low. CRP1, that's near zero inflammation. My body had essentially stopped fighting itself. But then I looked at the rest of the panel. HbA1c, blood sugar control, down from 47 to 37 over the preceding year. That's out of pre-diabetic range, 1 point away from being diagnosed, and into optimal. Alt liver enzymes, which had been at 69 in December 23, down to 10. HDL improved. Cholesterol ratio improving. Creatinine down. Bilirubin down. 8 markers, 3 months to a year. 1 set of interventions. That's not luck. When 8 completely different things improve at the same time, they don't have 8 different causes. They have 1. The root cause, systematic inflammation, driven largely through the gut, had been addressed and everything downstream was following. Now, I want to be careful here. This is my data. 1 person, 13 years of blood tests, not a clinical trial. My working hypothesis, and I do mean hypothesis, not proven fact, is that fixing insulin sensitivity and healing the gut microbiome simultaneously removed the main drivers of my systemic inflammation. My GP reviewed the results. He was pleased. He didn't attach a specific mechanism to, and I'm not claiming, certainly about what caused what. I'm showing the pattern that suggests a shared root cause. And here's the interesting thing about that pattern. I can see it in my data going back years before anything was flagged. The mechanism was running long before anyone put a name on it. That's worth knowing. Now, the physical proof, because biomarkers are one thing, walking is another. Day 24 of a 21-day fast, 3 days into the refeed, 24 years of gout, uric acid crystals that had been building on my big toe joint for as long as I can remember. That morning, I'm not entirely sure, but I put on my Birkenstocks on. Shoes I genuinely hadn't been able to wear comfortably for years because of the pressure on that joint. I walked 4 miles, not a flinch. I'm not going to oversell this. I don't know exactly which part of the process drove that specific change. Fasting, the gut work, the autophagy, the uric acid reduction, probably several things at once. But I know that 24 years of that problem had not been resolved on allopurinol, the gout medication that I'd been on for most of that time. And 4 miles in Birkenstocks, that was new. That was the moment that I took my gut seriously. 13 years of NHS blood tests, the actual numbers, the GP conversations, what changed and what didn't. If you want to follow someone who documents this properly rather than just talks about it, that's what this channel is. Subscribe if that's useful to you. What I'd actually change if I was starting from scratch, knowing what I know now. Here's what I'd have done earlier. I'd have added fermented foods before I understood why. I spent 18 months reading about the gut before I committed properly to daily fermented foods. I should have started. The research and my own blood both suggest the response begins quickly. You don't need to understand the mechanism fully to start feeding the ground cover. Practical starting point, 1 to 2 portions of fermented food daily. Not a supplement, not a capsule, just actual fermented food. Kefir, live yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, kombucha. These deliver live bacteria and the beneficial compounds these bacteria produce. Start with one you'll actually eat. That bit matters more than which one you pick. Second, remove the main inflammatory inputs before you try to add things in. Ultra-processed food, emulsifiers, preservatives, industrial seed oils, synthetic additives damage the gut wall directly. You can eat all the fermented foods you like, but if you're simultaneously pouring acid on the cellar door, the ground cover's not going to hold. Third, and this is the one I would have tested sooner, get your CRP measured. It's not on a standard NHS panel. You have to ask for it specifically or get it done privately. It's cheap. The range is 0 to 10. Anything above 1 is worth paying attention to. Mine was 6.2 and I had no idea. Ask your GP. If they won't add it, a private test costs less than a takeaway. CRP tested at baseline, then again in 3 months. That's the minimum data you need to know to see if this is working. Fasting glucose every morning if you have a meter. Trend it over weeks, not individual readings. And honestly, write down how your joints feel. Pain is data. If something shifts, you want to know when it started. Expectations. First 2 weeks, gut is responding. Probably won't feel it. The inflammatory proteins are shifting before the symptoms do. Week 3 to 4, digestion very often improves. Energy can start stabilising. And by month 3, retest your CRP. If you've been consistent, that's going to be your first real data point. 6 months to a year, the deeper structural changes. Gut diversity rebuilding. Inflammation trends continuing to drop. That's where the biomarker picture starts to tell a proper story. If you're on anti-inflammatory medication, immunosuppressants, or any medication for a digestive condition, please speak to your GP before making significant dietary changes. Gut healing can change how medications are absorbed and processed. Don't manage that alone. If you have a history of gut problems, IBS, IBD, Crohn's, colitis, fermented foods, and high-fibre diets can occasionally trigger symptoms in the short term. Start slowly, listen to your body, and get professional guidance specific to your situation. Fasting for inflammation. If you're considering it, 16 to 18 hours overnight is a reasonable starting point. Extended fasting, multiple days. I know I didn't build up to it, but I would recommend that you do. I've put together a gut health and inflammation tracker, logs your CRP over time, tracks fermented food portions daily, and gives you a simple framework for monitoring the pattern across months, not just days. The link's in the description and it's free.